We know Maximilien Robespierre as the face of the terror. Cold, precise, the man whose ideas and signatures helped send thousands to the guillotine. But what about his final day? What happens when the executioner becomes the condemned? These are the 24 hours that flipped the French Revolution on its head. The day the most feared man in France became the hunted. July 27, 1794. 9 a.m. The hall of the National Convention is already restless when Robespierre steps up to the rostrum. He's here to speak. And everyone knows when Robespierre speaks, people die. He begins a long address, nearly 2 hours of suspicion and warning, circling around enemies of the Republic, traitors hiding in plain sight. But something is off. His voice wavers, his hands tremble against his notes. This isn't the iron commander of virtue they've watched dominate the chamber for months. This is a man fraying in front of 800 deputies. There is a conspiracy against public liberty, he declares. He says France is poisoned by corruption. He says the revolution is surrounded by plots, but he won't name names. He refuses to point a finger. He just keeps talking. Virtue, betrayal, shadows, rot. The same themes as always, but now they land like broken tiles. That hesitation is fatal. Every deputy in the room hears the threat meant for someone else and imagines his own head in the basket. If Robespierre sees enemies everywhere, then any of them could be next. The longer he speaks without naming suspects, the louder the fear grows. The speech finally drags to a close around 11:30 a.m. Scattered clapping follows, thin, uncertain. On most days, the room would erupt for him. Today, silence settles like a verdict, and then the knives come out. One by one, deputies rise to gut him in public. Tallien calls him a dictator. Below Varenne brands him a tyrant. Men who once sat rigid in terror now find their voices. Barrère, once his ally, his mouthpiece, his shield, stands and drives the blade deeper. The hall roars approval. Robespierre tries to answer. Nothing comes out. He opens his mouth and can't speak. The man whose words sentenced others to death finds none to save himself. The shouting swells, rolling down from the benches. Down with the tyrant. The convention votes, overwhelmingly. Robespierre is placed under arrest. So is his younger brother Augustin. So are three of his closest allies, Saint-Just, Couthon, and Lebas. The inner circle of the terror has become its newest target. Only a few hardline Jacobins mutter protests. Saint-Just rises to defend him, but they shout him down. Couthon begs for mercy from his wheelchair. No one listens. By noon, the Republic has turned on its high priest. 2 p.m. news strikes Paris like lightning. The Commune, the revolutionary municipal government, hears the convention has arrested their man. These are Robespierre's loyalists, the ones who control the city streets, the ones who fed the terror from below. They refuse to accept the order. Armed men are dispatched to free him from the Committee of General Security. This is the moment the revolution teeters into civil war. Not in the provinces, not on the borders, but in Paris itself. The rescue comes fast. Commune troops storm the building, overwhelm the guards, and pull Robespierre and his allies out before the convention can react. For a few electric hours, the hunted man becomes a prize again. But now comes the question, where do you hide the most recognizable face in France? 3:30 p.m. They bring him to the Hôtel de Ville, City Hall. At once it becomes both fortress and trap. Officials barricade doors, post guards at every entrance, and shout defiance. But the building sits wide open in the center of Paris. surrounded by streets that can be sealed from every direction. No secret tunnels, no safe rear exits, no clean escape. 5 p.m. Inside, Robespierre sits in a shabby office, surrounded by perhaps 200 National Guardsmen still loyal to the Commune. Outside, the convention scrambles troops. You can hear the city shifting. Boots striking stone, wagon wheels clattering, cannon being dragged into position. His followers plead with him to flee. Boats wait on the Seine. Horses are ready at the city gates. He could disappear into the countryside before nightfall. Robespierre doesn't move. He freezes, trapped not by walls but by indecision. The revolutionary who reshaped France now sits motionless while his world collapses around him. Why doesn't he run? Some say pride. Some say he still believed Paris would rise for him. But the truth is uglier and simpler. There's nowhere to go. Every French town has a guillotine. Every mayor knows his face. Escape wouldn't mean freedom. It would mean being hunted, cornered, and killed anyway. At least here, he can pretend he still matters. 6:30 p.m. Convention forces surround City Hall. General Barras commands around 6,000 men. Cannons face the main doors, but the gunners hesitate. Inside are priceless revolutionary records. 5 years of upheaval written in ink. A cannonball could wipe out history. The standoff holds. 7:15 p.m. Then François Henriot arrives, commander of the Paris National Guard and Robespierre's fiercest supporter. A year earlier, Henriot had rolled cannons into the convention to crush the Girondins. If anyone can save Robespierre now, it's him. But he staggers in, drunk, disastrously, humiliatingly drunk. His soldiers watch him sway, hear him slur orders, and something snaps. Confidence drains out of the room. Some guards slip away into the night. Others quietly switch sides. The Commune's armed support bleeds away hour by hour. 8:30 p.m. The convention outlaws Robespierre. It's an old legal weapon. Outlawry means no trial, no defense, no appeal. Anyone can kill him on sight. The same law he used to crush others now aims straight at him. Town criers shout the decree through every district. Handbills plaster walls. A bounty in everything but name spreads across Paris. Robespierre is no longer a politician. He is prey. 10 p.m. Defections begin inside City Hall. Commune officials slip out through side doors. Men who swore loyalty at sunset now fear for their own necks. The building empties section by section. Guards abandon posts. Clerks flee with their ledgers. The fortress becomes hollow. 10:30 p.m. Robespierre writes his last letters. His hands shake as he scratches lines to his sister Charlotte. He leaves instructions for his dog, Braunt. Small, ordinary details from a man staring at the end of everything. He signs each page with his full name and title, as if authority still flows from his pen. Around him, the others wait. Augustin paces like a caged animal. Saint-Just sits silent and rigid in a corner. Couthon mutters prayers in his chair. Lebas checks and rechecks his pistol. 5 men who once controlled France now huddle in a cramped office, listening to footsteps echo through a building that's dying around them. 12:15 a.m., July 28th. Convention troops storm City Hall. Gunfire cracks through hallways. Boots thunder over marble floors. The Commune defenders fire a few desperate volleys, and then break. There's no discipline left, no leadership, no hope. The assault comes from 3 sides at once. Barricaded desks and chairs splinter like dry wood. Midnight slips into chaos. 1 a.m., Lebas raises his pistol and shoots himself in the head. Better to die than be dragged to the scaffold. His body crumples onto a mound of papers. Blood soaks proclamations, decrees, death warrants. The paperwork of the terror stained by one of its architects. 1:15 a.m., the doors burst open, soldiers flood in. Robespierre is at a table, head low, hands close to his chest. Some say he tries to shoot himself, a clumsy, frantic attempt, and the gun misfires, ripping through his jaw. Others claim a soldier's bullet hits him in the scramble. Either way, the result is horror. His lower jaw is shattered, teeth spray, blood floods his throat. He collapses, alive but ruined, choking on a wound that will not let him speak again. Augustin, in despair, throws himself from a window. He survives, but both legs break on impact. Couthon is dragged from his chair and tumbles down a staircase like a broken doll. Saint-Just surrenders without a word. The terror's inner circle falls in 15 minutes. 2 a.m. They carry Robespierre out on a stretcher through Paris's streets. His jaw hangs loose beneath a crude bandage. Blood soaks through cloth, down his neck, onto the boards beneath him. He can barely breathe. Crowds gather in the night, furious, fearless now. People spit, people curse, stones fly. The same city that once worshipped him leans in to watch him bleed like any other man. Paris has smelled weakness before, and it never forgets. 3:30 a.m., emergency care at the Tuileries. An army surgeon examines him by candlelight. The jaw is shattered in multiple places. Teeth are gone. The tongue is nearly severed, but the brain is untouched. Robespierre will live, not to recover, only to be executed. Dawn, July 28th. They haul Robespierre back to the Committee of Public Safety, his own headquarters, the same place where he signed death orders with a steady hand for months. Now he is dumped onto a table like evidence. His jaw is wrapped in dirty cloth. One eye is swollen shut. He breathes through froth and blood. The irony is almost too sharp to touch. This room is soaked in the habits of terror. The desk still carries his papers. His name sits at the bottom of warrants still waiting to be carried out. The chairs where deputies once leaned in to hear him speak are now filled with guards who can't wait to see him die. 8 a.m. Paris wakes up to chaos. News races through the quarters faster than smoke. Robespierre is captured. The leader of the terror is finished. Crowds surge into the streets in disbelief, then relief, then something dangerously close to joy. People who have lived in whispered fear for a year now speak at full volume. They sing songs that were forbidden last week. Some pull out bottles of wine they've been hiding since the first arrests. Bakers open early. Shops throw up shutters. The city feels like it's breathing again, but carefully, almost nervously, like someone waking from a nightmare and not quite trusting that it's over. 10:30 a.m. The trial begins, if you can call it that. Fouquier-Tinville, the public prosecutor, reviews the case. But outlawry changes everything. There will be no defense, no witnesses, no debate. The court only needs to confirm identity. The sentence is already written. Robespierre tries to protest, but he can't speak. His jaw is destroyed. He scratches a few trembling notes with a pen, hoping paper will do what his voice can't. Fouquier barely looks at them. The legal machinery Robespierre perfected runs in reverse now, and it moves just as fast. Noon. The tumbril arrives. The same wooden cart that carried Marie Antoinette, Danton, Hébert, and thousands of nameless victims to the scaffold. It's just a cart. Rough boards, iron tires, no dignity built into it. But it has become the final hallway of the revolution. They lift Robespierre into it like freight. He can't sit properly. His body is too weak, his jaw too painful. He braces himself against the side rails, swaying with every movement. The executioner's assistant helps steady him, not kindly exactly, but with the practiced touch of someone who handles dying men for a living. And Robespierre feels lighter than anyone expects. Months of strain, sleeplessness, paranoia, and power have hollowed him out. The terror consumed its maker from the inside before anyone else could. The crowd waiting outside is massive, the largest Paris has seen in years. Everyone wants a glimpse of the fall. Women scream curses from windows. Men wave rags stained with old blood. Children throw trash and rocks, shrieking with the excitement of a public spectacle. This procession is slow, deliberate, almost theatrical. Death to the tyrant. Down with the dictator. Voices pour from every threshold. This is the same city that once cheered Robespierre as the defender of virtue. Now they want his blood more than bread. The cart creaks forward through streets packed shoulder to shoulder. Every jolt sends a fresh, lightning spike of agony through his shattered jaw. His eyes stay closed. Maybe he's drifting into shock. Maybe he's ashamed. Maybe he just doesn't want to see the faces that once adored him, now twisted into hate. 12:30 p.m., Rue Saint-Honoré? The tumbril rolls past his old lodgings, the modest house where he lived for 4 years, where he wrote speeches by candlelight, where he planned purges that shook the country. Someone hurls a bucket of pig's blood at the windows. Red streaks drip down the glass like tears. The landlord peeks from behind a curtain. Duplay, the carpenter who once treated Robespierre like a son, stays hidden. Revolutionary friendship dies fast when the guillotine calls your name. 1 p.m., the revolution is devouring itself in real time. The crowd thickens to a crushing press, maybe 20,000 bodies along the route. Vendors do brisk trade. Pickpockets work the chaos. It's ugly and alive and hungry. Death draws commerce the way honey draws flies. 2:30 p.m., Place de la Révolution. The guillotine stands waiting, tall as a threat against the sky. The very machine Robespierre helped make sacred. The blade is clean. The basket rests ready. The scaffold creaks under the weight of guards and executioners. A roar rises as the tumbril arrives. They drag Robespierre up the steps. At the top, executioner Sanson reaches for the bandage around his jaw. He tears it away. The cloth pulls against shattered bone and raw flesh. Robespierre releases a sound that isn't a word, a ragged animal shriek that slices through the crowd's thunder. Then silence. A sharp, icy silence as they force him into position. His head is guided into the lunette. An assistant pins his shoulders. Another grips his legs. Efficient, practiced, indifferent. They have done this 1,000 times. Sanson checks the mechanism one last time. Robespierre's eyes open, suddenly clear for the first time in hours. He sees the blade poised above him. He sees the platform dark with old stains. He sees Paris packed tight around the scaffold like a living wall. Understanding crosses his face. The architect finally sees himself inside the machine. The blade falls. The crowd detonates. Sanson lifts the head, and Paris explodes into delirium. Shouting, sobbing, laughter, screaming joy. People leap and dance as if released from a spell. Wine splashes into the straw. Church bells ring for the first time since the terror began. Blood pools beneath the frame, soaking the same straw that drank thousands of lives before his. The guillotine claims its most famous meal. The man who fed it now feeds it one last time. 3:15 p.m. Cleanup begins before the noise even fades. Bodies are hauled away on carts. Augustin Robespierre, Saint-Just, Couthon. 22 men in all are executed in the afternoon heat. The leadership of the Terror is erased in a single session, as if the revolution is trying to wipe the slate clean before nightfall. Paris drinks to their deaths long past midnight. But the story doesn't end at the scaffold. While the streets celebrate, crowds swarm Robespierre's old residence on Rue Saint-Honoré. Doors are forced, drawers pulled out, cabinets smashed open. Citizens rummage through his belongings like scavengers, hunting souvenirs, hunting secrets. What they find shocks even hardened revolutionaries. First discovery: the famous green coat, the one he wore for key speeches, the one so many Parisians could picture even with their eyes closed. It hangs neatly in his wardrobe while the city he ruled bled outside. They tear it apart on the spot. People fight for scraps. Everyone wants a piece of the tyrant's clothing, a relic to prove they were there when his world ended. The coat that symbolized authority becomes a tourist trinket in an hour. 5:30 p.m. Then the officials arrive. Revolutionary investigators seal the apartment and begin a formal inventory for state confiscation. Standard procedure after an execution. But what they record sketches a portrait no one expected. Books, hundreds of them. Philosophy, law, poetry, history. Rousseau's works in full, pages crowded with Robespierre's careful notes and neat underlines. Volumes on Roman virtue and ancient republics, dog-eared and worn. The shelves map the mind behind the monster, a man who lived inside ideals the way other men live inside houses. 6:15 p.m. They find his dog, Brount, locked in a back room, half-starved, whining at the door. Officials argue over what to do with a dictator's pet. Someone suggests execution. Others call that insanity. In the end, a street sweeper quietly adopts him and carries him away that night. Brount slips into anonymity, the only living creature left to mourn Robespierre. 8:15 p.m. Private papers surface. Letters from his sister Charlotte, shopping lists for household supplies, simple receipts, personal accounts showing careful, almost obsessive frugality. The public monster lived like a middling clerk. Modest meals, plain furniture, no luxuries beyond books. But deeper in the drawers, there's another layer. Correspondence with provincial officials, reports from local representatives, a web of intelligence spanning France. Robespierre had eyes everywhere. Every department, every district, every influential citizen tracked like prey. The Terror watched everyone. 8:30 p.m. Then comes the discovery that makes the room go quiet. Citizen Courtois, appointed to examine Robespierre's papers, finds a hidden drawer built into the desk, invisible unless you knew where to press. He works the latch, pulls it open, and freezes. Inside is a list. 137 names, written in Robespierre's precise hand. Deputies marked for immediate arrest and execution. A purge scheduled for July 30th, just 3 days after this moment. So vast it would have eclipsed everything that came before. Everyone leans closer. They read the sections. Section 1. Moderates who questioned the pace of the Terror. Men who had survived the Girondin purge by silence, thinking quiet would keep them safe. It would not have. Section 2. His own allies. Cold betrayals in ink. Deputies who had helped steer the Terror, who had defended him in crisis, now slated for the blade. Even Barrère appears. Loyalty meant nothing under paranoia. Section 3. Administrators, mayors, judges, generals, men who carried out his orders faithfully. Fouquier-Tinville tops the list. The prosecutor who sent thousands to death was scheduled for his own appointment with the guillotine. The revolution was preparing to eat itself from the head down. 9:15 p.m. More drafts appear. Speeches Robespierre had prepared to justify the purge, ready to whip the public into the same frenzy that fueled earlier massacres. He planned to blame foreign cabals, Austrian gold, British agents. The old ghosts rolled out again, but this time on a staggering scale. Entire branches of government marked for eradication. Military commanders to be replaced overnight. Provincial administrations to be swept clean. France would have woken under a personal dictatorship or fallen into civil war. 10 p.m. Investigators open his private journal. Daily entries from the last 6 months. Paranoid spirals about enemies and plots. Everyone suspect. Everyone hiding royalist sympathies. The preacher of virtue sees corruption in every shadow. June entries talk about sleepless nights, fear of assassination, checking locks 3 times before bed. The leader of the terror lived terrified by his own creation. The July pages turn desperate. Plans to denounce half the convention. Wild theories about deputy conspiracies. The final entry is dated July 26th. Tomorrow I will tell the truth, that virtue may triumph, or I will die. A man walking a razor edge, resolved to cleanse France in blood or be swallowed by it. Midnight approaches. Paris still sings in the streets, wine flowing, forbidden songs rising from every corner. The end of the terror feels like a national exhale. But by candlelight in this quiet apartment, investigators are staring at something worse than a fallen tyrant. They're staring at a future France barely escaped. 1 a.m., July 29th. The investigators keep working long after Paris has drowned itself in celebration. Robespierre is dead, the scaffold is washed, the inner circle is gone. Yet the papers on this table refuse to let the story end neatly. Piece by piece, they reconstruct what his final weeks were really building toward. This was no improvisation, no sudden burst of madness scribbled in the margins. Robespierre had drafted a systematic elimination of France's leadership. Not random arrests, not piecemeal killings, but a complete gutting of the Republic all at once. Every institution hollowed out simultaneously. Every major figure marked for the blade. Among the seized files lie military orders already signed, sealed, and ready to send. Arrest warrants for generals who had just won victories against foreign invaders. In Robespierre's eyes, success didn't mean loyalty. It meant danger. A popular commander was a potential rival, and rivals were poison. If those orders had gone out, the French army would have woken leaderless. Foreign forces massed on the borders would have marched into chaos. The revolution wasn't just devouring itself. It was preparing to hand itself to its enemies. 2:30 a.m., more letters surface from provincial officials. They're written in code, but the meaning is clear once you know how to read the pattern. Prepare lists of suspicious citizens. Ready the guillotines for mass executions. Increase surveillance. Report any wavering virtue. Robespierre wasn't planning to keep the purge in Paris. The terror was meant to spill outward into every town square, every churchyard, every marketplace across France. The blade wouldn't just fall on politicians. It would fall on whole communities. Lyon, already punished brutally for revolt, faced a future even darker. Some documents hint at total depopulation, buildings razed, survivors scattered, the city erased from the map. Vengeance wasn't an emotion anymore. It was policy. 4:05 a.m., financial papers tell another part of the story. France is bankrupt. War abroad drains the treasury. Repression at home shatters taxation. Administrators hide, flee, or freeze because any signature could be twisted into treason tomorrow. The Republic bleeds money faster than it can print assignats. Robespierre's solution sits coolly on the page: confiscate more property from the condemned. Fund the government through seizures. Use executions to refill the treasury. Death as economic policy. Each arrest becomes not just a political cleansing, but a revenue stream. The guillotine, already a moral weapon in his mind, becomes a financial engine. 4:15 a.m. Then come the personal letters, the ones that expose the human cracks underneath the ideology. Charlotte, his sister, pleading for the violence to stop. Augustin writing about private doubts, about exhaustion, about France collapsing under fear. Even within the inner circle, voices were questioning the endless blood. Robespierre's responses are colder each week, shorter, more rigid. Isolation hardens him. The more people hesitated around him, the more he seemed convinced only he had the strength to act. Later drafts show a man resolved to move alone if he must. If virtue requires sacrifice, he will demand it. If France must be purified in blood, he will be its priest. If others falter, he will not. The incorruptible becomes utterly unbending. Dawn, July 29th. 24 hours since his arrest. Paris counts its dead, still half drunk on relief, still unsure what tomorrow looks like. The terror has taken roughly 17,000 lives in 14 months. People are already asking how something so vast, so violent, could have grown from ideals that once sounded pure. But the papers show something even worse. The last purge wasn't going to be smaller. It was going to be the largest yet. 5:30 a.m. The final inventory of his possessions is almost laughably modest. Personal wealth, 873 livres, less than what a skilled artisan might earn in a year. The man who controlled France's treasury lived poorer than many of his victims. No secret fortune, no hoarded jewels, no hidden estates. Power without profit, destruction without enrichment. His most valuable belongings are banal, even sad. Law books inherited from his father, revolutionary medals awarded by committees, a silver watch gifted by citizens back when his speeches still inspired hope. The material remains of a life chained to abstract ideals, not luxury. That's what makes the fear sharper. This wasn't greed. This was belief. 7:15 a.m. The investigators finish sealing the evidence. Hundreds of documents are cataloged, locked away, and marked for the archives. The room feels colder now that the full picture has settled in. This wasn't a man drifting into random slaughter. It was architecture, scheduled violence, careful and methodical, designed to strip the Republic down to its studs and rebuild it around a single will. The files will disappear into government vaults, not to surface publicly for decades. But whispers spread immediately in political circles. Deputies who survived by hours, generals saved by chance, officials who had no idea their names were already inked onto a list. France had stepped back from the cliff by accident, not by heroic uprising, not by noble reform, by pure, brutal luck. 7:30 a.m., and that truth begins to sink in. Robespierre's death didn't end the terror because the people rose as one, or because the army staged a grand coup. It ended because a pistol misfired, and because convention troops stormed City Hall when they did. If the gunshot had found his brain instead of his jaw, if the assault had been 20 minutes later, France would have woken into something even darker than the terror it already knew. A purge so wide it would have decapitated the revolution itself. A dictatorship of one man built on the bones of everyone else. 3 days later, investigators unlock one last secret hidden deep in Robespierre's desk. Architectural plans, technical sketches, a proposal to expand the guillotine's operation across Paris, multiple execution sites to run simultaneously, new mechanical designs intended to kill faster, even hints of steam-driven efficiency. Industrialized death on a scale the world had never seen. The man who preached virtue had prepared to mechanize terror itself. And suddenly, that final journal line from July 26th reads differently. "Tomorrow I will tell the truth, that virtue may triumph, or I will die." He wasn't just bracing for a speech. He was bracing for the moment the Republic either submitted to him completely or destroyed him before he could destroy it. Paris survived by a hair, a misfired pistol, a night of chaos, a handful of deputies who finally chose to shout back. That is how the terror ended. Not with a clean moral lesson, not with the revolution triumphantly correcting itself, but with chance, a razor-thin gap between catastrophe and collapse. And maybe that's the most haunting part of Robespierre's last day. The Republic didn't beat him because it was stronger. It beat him because, for once, he hesitated. He froze at the critical moment. He wouldn't name names. He wouldn't flee. He couldn't act fast enough. The man who had taught France to move ruthlessly found himself paralyzed when the blade turned toward him. And so the machine he built devoured him. The guillotine he sanctified took him. The terror he unleashed closed its jaws around its maker. The revolution stepped away from the abyss, not because it learned mercy, but because the architect of its cruelty fell first. That single day, those 24 hours, didn't just kill a man. They snapped the spine of the terror and left France staring into the wreckage, asking what virtue is worth when it needs blood to survive.